glad you could join us for our worship today. Do you know, I wonder how good your vision is. Here's one that's wearing specs for since he's been probably in primary 7. We can miss so much when we don't have them on, and I find that you just don't see things clearly, even in a room, for me anyway particularly. Can you spot something at a distance from your window or where you're sitting just now? How well do you see something? You see, as an amateur artist, I know that it's important to be observant about the shape and form of what you draw and paint, so it actually looks like what you want it to look like for others to see. It's not what you think you know, it's what you see is important. And you see, when I was helping my kids at artwork, sometimes they would draw something and they just wouldn't look right, and I'd tell them, stop thinking what you're seeing and draw what you see. It seemed to transform it, thankfully, and a few of them managed to do some good drawings thereafter, and one actually went to art school, which was great. But that's only part of it. Do we see others' opinions? How do we see others? You only need to be 5 minutes into Question Time on the BBC this hour that sometimes people don't see eye to eye. Sometimes we think we have a complete understanding about something but miss the point. Why? Well, we probably don't have the full picture. That's what happened in our story today with Jesus and the healing of a blind man. We've been on a journey through John's Gospel and been looking at signs in Jesus' life to help us point towards how we can be closer to God. Now we come to this story here of this blind man who does go back and instructed to go back to the pool of Siloam in Jerusalem. The same place we were at thinking of in the earlier weeks. Again, the focus in this story is not a biology lesson. John was writing to the early church and he was encouraging them to understand that God helps us to see the world as it is and as it should be. So there's something to learn by what happens here, not just for the blind man, but also for those who can see in our story, and also for those who are missing the point in our story. They have a blind spot. You see, the story tells us that everyone bar Jesus was jumping to conclusions about this blind man. Jesus was dealing with tunnel vision right in front of him. Prejudice is the word we will be used to. Everyone around was saying, something bad has happened in that person's life for that bad thing to happen. And Jesus' response is no. When they saw the blind man, the disciples asked, well, if it's not the man, could it be the parents or their ancestors? It must be someone whose fault is it? You see, it is true, when we make poor choices, there are consequences. It can have a knock-on effect for others. But this is not what's going on here, because bad things happen to good people too. So they were so sure about their belief that they would not accept even when the blind man who could see now was standing in front of them. In fact, in the story, what John is really saying is that these ones are the ones that are blind. The faith of this man was something they could not work out, even though the result of his faith meant he was standing there in front of them, looking back at them. Now, while we point the finger at those in the story, it is a daily challenge to us not to jump to conclusions, to make premature judgments, or to have traces of prejudice without even realising it. Blind spots in our lives. Tunnel vision. We're not seeing the complete picture. And we could do that when we hear gossip about a friend, or as a parent we speak too soon, not realising all the facts about our own children. Or we make passing comment about someone else without knowing the facts when we're at work. So what's our blind spot? What prejudices do we have? Now Jesus didn't only mix it up about what people thought of others, he mixes it up about the way we help others. You see, we can end up having fixed ideas of how to fix things. We can get set in our ways. See, Jesus heals differently in different stories. He touched people, he spoke, he used spit, and then he uses, in this story, spit and mud. In other words, this is not the important part. In this past part of the world, God's people viewed spit as something of an insult. And even the making of the mud with the spit was on a Sabbath, which would be viewed as work by the onlooker. They would say, what on earth are you doing, Jesus? It was almost like a double hit about how people made sense of their world. Jesus was showing they did not see things clearly as they thought. You see, tradition can sometimes blind us to the very reason why it became a tradition in the first place. And Jesus was mixing this up so that our ideas and our ways of doing things don't get in the way of something good in this world that needs to be done. Could we become so fixed in how we do things that it's stopping us the good we can do? And this way, we can think, well, we've always done it this way. Well, is that the case today? Have we reached a point that we've got so fixed in how something is done that we're letting that get in the way of helping others? And this is what Jesus was challenging. Could we be tempted to think if we do it this way, it will work? Jesus was stripping this right back. He was taking the scales off their eyes to see that in the end, it's about faith. It's about what happens inside the person that really counts. See, Jesus makes it up even about circumstances and how they can be understood. This sign from our story points out that it's possible that something good can come out of the most challenging of circumstances. Now, sometimes that's hard to see when you're in it. Here was a person who was blind for ages. What good is that? Jesus did not even cure the man straight away. He had to go to the pool of Siloam. He had to wash his eyes. It wasn't straight away. And yet he persevered. Something was changing inside. Because he obeyed Jesus. And he received his sight. That's no simple ask. In the face of the prejudice, the circumstance and the attitudes of others, this man had to find his way through. Even his vision was not clear, but his decisions were. He followed Jesus. You see, obeying is not down to rules. It's when we see what Jesus sees and respond. Then we will see good results in our lives. We need to pray that Jesus will give to us the gift of spiritual sight. In other words, Will we love what Jesus loves? Will we accept who Jesus accepts? Will we live as Jesus lives? Will we follow Jesus? You see, Jesus led the way on this part of his life. He knows firsthand there's a challenge, that bad circumstances don't even just lead to worse circumstances. He goes through that where it's not a dead end, it's quite the opposite. Because this sign was beginning to point forwards and towards Easter. What good could ever come out of dying on a cross in a cruel death? See, Easter is not a dead-end story. Neither is our journey with God. When we see that goodness through Jesus breaks through. I've often finished these talks with the TLC. Think about something, listen to someone, and then care for someone. Well, think about the prejudices that could be in our lives. What are our blind spots? Maybe listen to others and hear the prejudices that come from their lips and wonder, do we accept that? And then care for those who've gone through so many challenging and difficult circumstances where they could begin to doubt whether any good could come from it. We need to care for people through those dark times when they can't see a way forward. Maybe our prayers and our faith will uphold them. Thank you for listening.